Hey guys, how is everybody doing today? It's Friday. All right, so we are going to get started with Amy Weinberger again. And for those of you who will be checking this out on the recording, hope you can join us one of these days. It's some great opportunities to learn from a fantastic education navigator, get some questions asked, answered afterwards. But today we are going to let Amy talk to us about the different categories, right? That's what we're doing today, the different categories of how our children could potentially qualify for support from the education system. And all right, Amy, so let's get our learn on.
Sure, learn on. So buenos dias, good morning. I wanted to let you know that I added something on because I felt like it made sense here. Not only are we going to do the 13 categories, magic number 13, but we're going to go over some myths and facts of IDA because I think there's a lot of weird stuff that circulates that we feel like we might be restricted on as parents. And I want us to not be restricted, particularly because there are very limited, there are really no restrictions in IDA. It's just a matter of what we know versus what we don't know, right? Like how things are pushed out to us or how we feel intimidated in a meeting perhaps, or we're just not given, enough knowledge. So I'm gonna can you give me some sharing power, please?
Wait a second. How come I can't?
You can't give sharing power?
No, I think can you give her sharing power?
You can or cannot?
I cannot, and I don't know why I can't.
Yeah, it's a host should.
I just tried to make you.
Oh, I'm a co-host now. It works.
Does that work?
It works.
Okay.
Yep, it's all good. All good. Thank you. Let me know that you can see this page. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, we can see
Okay.
it.
So what I did, I just sort of, I wanted to make it easier to read and navigate. So these are the three things that we need to know about IDEA. Does everyone know what IDEA even stands for? Let's start there, right? So Individuals with Disabilities Act. It started about 1997. It used to be for mentally retarded, for mental retardation. That was the language used back in the day. And this kind of elevates the language, changes the language, and creates some more inclusivity for some other people. So IDEA keeps getting a little bit of update. It got a little bit of an update in 2014. And who qualifies for the services is kind of like from the 2014 time. And that's pretty current. So there's some things in rights law that have a couple other things added with language. But as far as what you need to know as a parent walking into a system, these are the three things that happen when a student has been acknowledged to have a disability enough so that it gets in the way of the learning in the classroom. I can't emphasize that enough because there are plenty of us who have had these children who do have issues, but they may not show up in the classroom, and then you don't get services. Even sometimes if you have, if you are on the ASD or FASD spectrum, but you're kind of okay in class, you may not get services. So there's this whole rigmarole that happens. What we see and what a teacher sees may not be the same. So let me just say that. So under IDEA, there's something called FAPE, and those four letters stand for free, appropriate public education. So this clearly applies to a public system, and it's for kids with disabilities. And the key was the change in what created the IDEA is that students must be able to learn side by side with other peers as much as possible. And then that brought up the term LRE, least restrictive environment. That doesn't mean that a student will qualify for LRE. It may be a max restrictive environment. I do have a couple kids that we've had to place in, they're not boarding schools, but they're, in restrictive environments, because that was that was the best placement for them. So I want you to know about FAPE if you didn't know. I wanted you to know about LRE, because this is language that gets tossed around in our IEP or 504 meetings. And then I don't know if you know about child find. It's not usually something that's talked about, but it's part of IDEA. And this is from a young person from birth all the way to 21. And that's when the school knows or thinks, even just thinks, that a child might have a disability. They have to evaluate. Even if they think, they're brought to the table. So you may not know, if you were a mom of a child for the first time, whether an adoption or biological or fostering, you've never had children before, and you just think the behaviors or the learning that you see is like, typical. But it may not be. Like, we're limited as parents if it's our first child, because we don't always know, right? So if a school knows something's going down, they have to do something called child find and get that student tested. That's like a thing. I want to just make sure that we know that. And then finally, under IDEA, there's these things called procedural safeguards. And it's like bathroom reading material, okay? You can't read it at a meeting when they give it out to you. And they'll say something like, oh, do you want your procedural safeguards? And always say yes. It doesn't matter if you have a stack of them sitting on your dining room table, just say yes, and then date it. So that, because that date means that they're doing their job. This is what you have to get in the school setting. You can decline your procedural safeguards, but I wouldn't. I would absolutely say, yes, thank you so much. It's my 5th copy. I would love to have another one. Throw a little sarcasm in there and everyone will chuckle and get your, and then date it, because that told you when you were at your last meeting and that you were heard. Well, we at least think you were heard. Okay, so these are the 13 qualifying categories. Notice what's not on here. Drum roll, please. FASD, but ASD is, so we're going to go with that. And we're going to throw an F in there when we need it, right? But if you look at the other pieces, someone who lives with the diagnosis of FASD could be these other things, particularly other health impairment. So for those of us who keep trying to get an IEP or recognition of FASD, it's not even on their qualifications. So that's why you might feel or get pushback. So it's important to note that. Does that make sense? So if you want to take a picture of this, or if you want me to send you the link, I can. Tamara, maybe.
Send us the link, so we'll put it with the presentation.
Okay, I'll do that. So are there any questions about these? Deaf, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment? Notice how they're labeled, multiple disabilities. So multiple disabilities includes our kiddos living, with FASD, even though it doesn't say FASD. So we have a way in. Just even though it doesn't say it specifically, there is a direct way in with multiple disabilities, which could be FASD. All right, so this is the language that the care teams are using, kind of, not even, this is what they use as SLD, specific learning disabilities. Some of our kids will do that. Some traumatic brain injuries, some of our kiddos live with that. Does that make sense?
Amy, I have a question. I have 2 questions. First of all, I've never seen this multiple disabilities. Do a lot of schools use that? Yeah, because I do feel like that's exactly what FASD is.
That's right. So that's why I said we have a way in.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not being exercised with the word multiple disabilities. And this is pretty up to date because I checked things. I wanted to make sure. So you might have a kiddo with an intellectual disability, and that intellectual disability is stemming from the FASD space, right? From the workup and the testing that's done and the evals. So don't be afraid to use this language.
I had a
What you-
question
Yeah,
on the intellectual disability. Do they look at the IQ for that, or because I've used that term in the past and they've changed it to, oh no, you're talking about educational disability and we don't cover that.
yeah. So what the tightness of things, what's happened is if it's not relevant in the space of the classroom, even if someone, let's say someone has a IQ of, let's say they have an IQ of 68, but but they've learned how to read, language is pretty easy for them or better than it is maybe math, then you're seeing it's going to SLD, but you're not, unless it's a direct effect in the classroom, that's why you're getting that pushback. And so the intellectual disability of someone, the IQ number, so the way it was years and years ago, it was, you knew that you had a learning disability if you had an IQ of X and you had, what was the discrepancy thing? The IQ of X, and it was above or below something. And then they would take the difference, and if it was a 15-point spread, one way or the other, you got the gifted title, and or you got the intellectual disability title or SLD title or category. That's not how we work anymore. So everything is based on educational observation and how a student is performing in classes in general. Now with Ms. Morgan, the student may be performing beautifully because Ms. Morgan has a huge handle on her class, right? But over here in Mr. Simpson's class, it may be like the worst day, the worst hour in anyone's day. So it has to really be teacher by teacher almost, right? Because of relationship development with our FASD kiddos. Yeah. So intellectual disabilities is not the same as it used to be, as far as measurement, as how we calculate if someone is considered an intellectual disability in a classroom environment. What is a 68 you need to have to be considered
Used
intellectually
to be
disabled?
70, I think it is.
Oh, I think it dropped.
Really?
Yeah, because I have some kids who won't qualify at 70 anymore. We'd have, we need to check that number. That would be helpful. If someone could check that number.
Crystal just said they dropped it to 67 because she was one of those kiddos that
I thought it was
no longer
67.
can get
68.
that intellectual disability.
That's right. That's right. I thought so. So if you have a student who is with a 68, then that's that disqualifies you with that individual, that intellectual disability thing. But with that said, a 504 is a federal document and can still get you accommodations in the workforce, which ultimately is where, but it's nice if we could just have a little recognition over in the classroom, right? It's changed. All right, any questions here?
One
Crystal.
question I have for you also is with this emotional disturbance, I was under the impression that also like they're not giving the emotional disturbance anymore, especially with children that are Black or brown. Is that, because I know that in school, that when I was working in the school, that was an issue.
Behavior spectrum, they're calling it behavior, yeah.
Mhm,
And so now they have the behavior plans, right?
mhm.
So emotional disturbances, the question, let me ask that question, and is it better to pursue SOD versus multiple disabilities? I think it's better to pursue SOD at this point because that's what the schools, the districts are using. But I wouldn't steer away from the word multiple disabilities because we're working with students who have been diagnosed with multiple disabilities, and FASD isn't on our list. If there is a more up-to-date list, I will send it, but this is the one that I found that was most up-to-date. It's from understood.org, and they keep their stuff pretty current. So I would pursue SLD at this point. And behavior, where it says emotional disturbance, I would still use the language, but the other word is probably behavior disabilities, EBD, right? Emotional EBD. Good questions. Yeah, Crystal, you are battling this. How did things turn out? Well, we'll talk about that offline. Okay. So I would use any of this so people perk up so they know that you know what you're talking about. I would go in with language that I wouldn't say fight with, but you can like level the playing field with, right? Because we want to go in with yes. We don't want to go in with, being cornered. All right. So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to share the second part. So no more questions. All right.
Wait, I do have one more question. I'm sorry to go back to the SLP, like the specific learning disabilities versus multiple disabilities. I feel like sometimes when they get the specific learning disabilities, they're not focusing as much on all these other things that are going on with FASD. Like they're not accommodations that are set up. Like they don't look at executive functioning, which is a big thing. So is it better to do SLD, or is it better to do multiple diagnosis, or is it better to do other health impaired?
Yeah, so OHI for FASD student is probably your very, very best. So, you have primary and secondary, and OHI will be a blanket because then you can write goals if you're using an IEP for executive functioning. Remember, 504 is going to get you accommodations, not goal setting. So just remember that that's a pretty big difference in what you're asking for. So OHI and SLD are the big ones, as well as, EBD. And there are some moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and aunties, whoever the guardians are, who want the EBD classes. I think we talked about that, right, China? Did we talk about that? Oh, wait, you're still on mute.
For me, I think it's more like a fear that they're going to make him go to an EBD classroom. Like
it was the fear of, yeah.
Yeah, he was sent to Sable for kindergarten for the last half of the year, but this year they were threatening with more consequences when he was having some issues. And all I could think is, here we go again, back to another school.
So China, I do think, I don't know when your next meetings are coming up, but I think if we can be there in some way, shape, or form, it'll be pretty helpful, because one of the problems with the IEP 504, and I think that Tyrone experienced this, is the lack of creativity in helping a student. And
I do have an advocate that comes from chosen families. Would you still be able to attend with them being part of that?
That come from what families?
It's from Parenting Matters, FND, chosen families.
We just come on Zoom.
Okay, well, our
okay?
meetings are usually in person, but.
Well, now with COVID, you can request the Zoom link so that someone from the outside or another person, you can request that. That is a personal request.
Okay, but you would still be able to attend, like even
if I can,
the other advocate.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to get creative in these meetings. Remember, most people come into the meetings in one mindset, right, Jen? And that would be a fixed mindset that they come in with. And we're trying to create a growth mindset, because we do have other avenues of relating to people and to children, right? There are all kinds of wonderful people in schools if we know how to, put them together. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
we're due in
you're upside
November.
down, Jenny. What?
We're due to go back in November. But we just met and changed him to be fully VE for the start of the school year.
Does everyone know what VE means? Varying exceptionalities, which is kind of like OHI. Do you see what's happened? You see what we do? We like, things keep changing. They get uplifted, they get upgraded, new language comes in. So I will make sure, I mean, I checked my references, but I'll make sure that this is not old, but it was from understood.org. Yeah. All right, good question. All right, any other questions? All right, so now let's go into this myths versus facts, because this creates some really interesting conversation. And I don't want it to be blurry. Can you see? Is everyone seeing myth 1 through myth 10?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So let's just look at myth 10. We're going to count down, count up, right? Like on the late night TV shows. Myth number 10. Here we go. So if you've never had special education, you won't know how to support a child who does. Anyone ever heard this statement? That's why it's number 10. But it exists. All right. So if you can read it a couple ways. If you've never had special education, like you, the parent, then you just don't know. Or you can read it if you've not been around people who had special education, then you just won't know how to support a child who does. So let me just say that, of course, that's not true. But as a parent, we have some intuition. And Tyrone, you have intuition because we talked about it. And your intuition led you to do certain things over the years for your daughter, right?
Yes.
So did you grow up in a special education system personally?
No.
Exactly. Did anyone here grow up in a special education system personally? Was anyone in special ed besides me back in the day? Because I was in special ed in the 1960s and 70s. So clearly, you know how to support a child who is struggling, right? So that language has been updated. Myth number 9, kids with special ed services don't get a good education. Well, we can really talk about that one, can't we? You know, I want to chime in on this. Agree, disagree?
I would say it depends on the teacher. We've had issues with different teachers. I mean, some are very accepting and understanding, and others are just brutal, and it's like not good.
All right, so I'm gonna put a little key over here. F is gonna be false. All right, and we're gonna go with the grade of D, but D is gonna stand for depends. Right?
Yes.
All right, so there's depends, and I'm gonna put a D here. It does depend. Anyone else experience this?
I feel like my son's school does a lot for him and they try very hard. It just seems like he's kind of stuck.
Yeah, we talked about that. I didn't know how much space Tamara and Jen and Bailey you would give me to really talk more about NeuroNet, because I feel like it keeps coming up when I keep hearing kids are stuck, and I feel like if maybe I can share some more information when we get offline, that might be helpful. All right, myth number 8. Kids who get special education can't participate in the same activities as other kids. I hear this a lot. Anyone? Anyone notice?
In my experience, they have the opportunity, but they are kind of shunned because they don't fit in.
That was our reasoning for moving him fully to BE, because he has a one-on-one when he's in mainstream, but the other kid, feels like academically, behaviorally, emotionally, he can't keep up with the other kids and kids avoid him. Like my husband was on a field trip and he went up and was speaking to another mom and she looked horrified. She knew who he was, but she looked like she didn't want to speak to him. And
And a lot
Just-
of it had to do with they're not on the same grade level in their social skills, emotional skills, and interactive skills. And so as soon as they figure out they're on a different grade level, all of a sudden the bifurcation comes.
So it's not a myth. Number 8 is not a myth. So it's not true and it's not false, but people get shunned. Right? I think we see it in any situation, but particularly in our school setting, kids who have special education do, I see them not participating the same way. I'll give you a simplistic example. When a student did not get a very good score on their FSA, then the next year they have to forfeit an elective because they have to take the special, what is it, intensive English and intensive math. So art gets taken away, or music, or some elective, or computer science, or whatever, coding, or whatever it happens to be on the wheel. So I see that. I don't think number 8's a myth. All right, so myth number 7, it's called myth number 7. Let's see if we can bust it. Kids who have special education services have to take the special ed bus. So if you have an IEP, does that mean you have to take the special ed bus? No, that would come under transportation on the IEP. And unless you have a transportation need and it's not written down in the IEP, there's no special education bus. Does that make sense? That has to be a formal request via the IEP. All right, so this is false, right? This is definitely busted. Let me just get this is definitely false. Regardless of the disability, of the 13 disabilities. All right, so myth number 6, special education services are expensive, so other kids will lose out on activities. Other kids might be your other children. How many of us have children that because we're in OT or speech 3 days a week after school, that we drag our other kiddo along? And our other kiddo has to wait till brother or sister finishes for an hour? Anyone besides me?
No, I mean, we have some half sisters that they're in that situation. They've got normal kids and challenged kids and all kinds of services, and they're running into that all the time going, we feel bad because all of a sudden now one group feels that we're being favorites, but yet if we don't do that, then so it's a big family issue.
I think this brings up a topic that we haven't even put on our calendar. And that is how to help our siblings who live with siblings with disabilities that seem to get in the way of the families. And I think we can add that to the calendar.
And then you start seeing
So-
awkward behavior of the normal folks trying to get attention.
It's true. And there are lots of good movies out about it. Did anyone watch I think it's Netflix, called Atypical? Did you see the series? Atypical? What did you think? How did you perceive it, China?
I really liked it. My youngest daughter has really mild autism. She's pretty high functioning. Her biggest issue is social anxiety and loneliness a lot from that. But I liked the show, and my children watched some of it. Some of it wasn't too appropriate, but
I remember those. Yeah, I watched it too. I was very impressed, and it really gave me insight on my own family, right? Did I do enough for the sister, for when the brother was going through all the things and all the needs? And you can see what happens to the mom, right? because we started feeling, if you haven't watched it, put it on your to watch list, because it gave perspective for all of us to kind of learn and reflect on our own behaviors with our children who have disabilities or who struggle differently or live differently.
The other point on that one is financial, because it really talks about,
Yeah.
are your normal kids being without because you're spending money on and so that is true. Either somebody's going to suffer. It's either going to be your normal activities get curtailed in order to help the child in need, or the child in need's not getting the services they really should have because you're trying to balance it out. But that's the key, is how to balance it.
It is. And what's it, about $1 million to raise a kid these days in the United States?
Well, I keep a detailed Excel spreadsheet, and I've had caseworkers go, there's no physical way. And then when I send them all the receipts, they go, oh my gosh. And I go,
How
yeah,
much does it cost you? Can we ask?
I've been about 20 grand a year.
Anyone else experiencing that? Our insurance never picked up any OT, and it was 3 times a week until from the age of 3 months to the age of 9. I really don't know how we paid for it. So what is that, $100 a pop, unless you get a, some discount for paying in advance or something? So
The going rate, depending on what it is usually 100 to 150 an hour. And then sometimes the Zoom calls will go down to 75.
Let's just average $100. So it's $300 a week if it's 3 times for OT or speech or combo. And then you have 4 weeks in a month. So what is that? $1,200 a month. And then 1,200 times, and that's just for OT or speech. That doesn't include anything else that we do. So we're probably at $4,000 to $5,000 a month sometimes. Not sure how we do it. I mean, I didn't sell my firstborn, right? So yeah, it's interesting. So this is really not a myth, is it? It's really something that finances are really a big deal. And if you don't have a financial planner for someone, there are financial planners for moms and dads who have students who live on the spectrum of whatever it is, that you can actually do financial planning so you can get disabilities if you need to get the disability, and really working with people. Do we have that at Florida Center, that people can work with a financial person and help out? That's not a thing yet.
I was just about to send you a message going, do you have anyone that you can send us that we can have as maybe a special presentation? Because no, we don't have that.
I was going to say the CFPB, the Financial Protection Bureau, and the FDIC are really pushing the government for all the banks to get involved with financial literacy. And I've got through our website abilities for people to go in and do kind of self-help stuff. And then we are available to come out and do presentations, seminars, or whatever. And we've also got one of my people doing the Project 180, going into the prison systems and teaching financial literacy to those in the prison systems. And that's a FDIC program. It's like 43-hour program done over multiple weeks. And that to me is kind of heavy hit for people, but the more summarized version is get into budgeting and priorities and things like that. So any of the bankers can help out, and I'd be happy to help there.
I think we need that.
We'll talk, Tyrone, for sure.
Yeah,
I've got brochures on credit bureaus, what to deal with home financing, budgeting. I mean, different things that I can provide for free, as well as the internet access to a lot of information. But then you need somebody to guide you through it and to kind of help you understand what you just read.
If Florida Center kind of offered that as a service, I think that would be really like an upgrade 2.0, because we don't talk about finances, and we talk about how scared we are about them, but we don't talk about empowering ourselves with the knowledge.
Tamara, Jeff Wooden is one of my lenders, and he's on the board of Florida Center.
Yes, I love Jeff.
So he can help quite a bit too, because he's one of my
Oh my God.
lenders.
That's brilliant.
I'll
All right.
I'll talk with you and him to see
Okay,
if
please
maybe
do.
even
Circle
doing a
back.
special presentation would be amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yay, yay. Look what just happened. Two things happened. One, a financial literacy for our FASD families. And then number two, siblings, how we help our siblings.
And
So-
I'm also tied into the Boy Scouts, and we have a personal financial management merit badge for the Boy Scouts. And I purchased that pamphlet, and that goes from, talks about insurance, investing, checking accounts, budgeting, all kinds of things on a younger kids level. So that we can offer up too, because that's available to the general public.
Nice, nice. Thank you. All right, so I think we only have 15 minutes left, believe it or not. So I want to get through all these myths. So I'm going to go a little bit faster. Number 5, myth 5, kids who receive special education will be labeled forever. True or false?
I don't think that's true.
It is absolutely false. The only people who do the labeling are ourselves. Yeah. Myth number 4, kids who receive special ed will be labeled, I'm sorry. Wait, oh my gosh, I did a repeat.
Doubled.
Sorry. Okay. Myth number 3, getting services is always a battle. Hence the word always. Does everyone agree that that is probably true?
When we first were asking for help, the teacher was on board and she did a lot of collection and she did like tracking of behaviors and she wrote a letter, she did all kinds of things, but the school didn't acknowledge it until I brought in an advocate. And then at that point, we had to do the response to intervention and go through the multi-tier service thing. So it took bringing other people in. And as soon as I had an advocate, everybody showed up to the meetings from the school board. Like it was, or not the school board, but like all the important people. And, but before that, I just going in alone, I wasn't able to get anywhere, even though we were having significant challenges. But ever since we've had a okay time.
All right, let's call it what it is then. That one needs an advocate, so it's not a battle because the context, what we experienced is true. But once you have an advocate, the battle reduces. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yep, me too. All right,
We
myth number 2,
experienced the
special,
same.
yeah. Special education is only for kids with severe physical and intellectual disabilities.
No, that's not
That
true.
is false. That's not true. And myth number 1, kids who get special education services have to be in a separate classroom.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So when you hear these kinds of statements come out of some of our educators, our leaders who are doing this work, you get to say, oh no, that's just not true. Or for me, this is what's happened. So I want you to be able to speak up because these are myths that circulate. And the more times you hear something false, what do you start doing? You start believing it.
Leaving it.
Yeah. So we want to reduce that. That's what these conversations are about. Okay, so it's 4:17. It gives us 10 minutes for conversation. Did you want to stop recording or do you want to keep recording? Thank you.
I will stop the recording.
Everyone smile.